I am Bruno, and this is LARVOL and Friends, our weekly podcast where we meet friends of our company, LARVOL. LARVOL is a SaaS company. We sell software and data centered solutions to the healthcare and pharmaceutical industry. We are 150 people all over the world. We've been working remotely way before the pandemic, and now actually we are moving into the metaverse. We're the first company run from the metaverse. And today, actually, we're going to talk about VR and AR in healthcare with Joe Desiderio. And I'm very happy to have him on the program today. Hi, Joe.
Good morning, Bruno.
Are you calling in from New York? And I hope it's not too hot. I'm here in Los Angeles today.
Yes, we're on the opposite coast for sure. Not too hot. It's pretty good. Thank you.
Excellent. So I'm going to ask you to start by giving us a little bit of background on your journey, your professional journey, and then we will talk about VR and AR in healthcare. And at the end of the 30 minutes together, I'll ask you to make a pronouncement, maybe a prediction or a statement of great significance for our users. So I'm putting a lot of pressure for you here.
A lot of pressure.
It needs to be something that they'll remember forever. You won't believe what I heard on LARVOL and Friends today. That guy, Joe, which, by the way, I'm starting to follow on social media right now and on TikTok and everywhere else, just said the following thing. So no pressure.
No pressure. Thank you.
But that's going to be at the end of it. So you got 30 minutes to find that pronouncement. First,
okay. If you see the wheels turning in my head, it'll be very clear.
Yes. So, Joe, who are you?
Okay, and thank you. I guess so. In the LARVOL and Friends, I'm very pleased to be here in the Friends category today. So, my name is Joe Desiderio. I live here in New York, as you pointed out. And I'd say, who am I? I'm a connector of many dots in people and process and organizations for value creation. So I'm a consultant in innovation and healthcare and a few other spaces. I'm in many lanes at the moment. Journey-wise, I grew up here in New York, and when I was 16 or so, I wanted to be the next Jacques Cousteau. So I went to University of California at San Diego to study marine biology, and things took a turn. I wound up in cognitive science and philosophy. Flash forward a couple of years, I wound up back in New York City doing, this is in the mid 80s, doing tech support on Wall Street. My main job was to convince retail stockbrokers not to throw their Quotron terminals out the window. Did a couple of other corporate jobs. Today, we would call it digital transformation, but back in the late 80s, early 90s, we didn't have that language. But I was at Ogilvy and Sotheby's, so some big international corporations, fantastic training from a tech perspective. 2001, I got the itch to really start something of my own, created a company that pivoted into speech recognition for clinical documentation. And in a few years, it went really deep dive in surgical pathology. So in the diagnostic spaces, radiology, pathology were two really large speech recognition users. And we focused, this is VoiceBrook is the company. I'm still a founder and an owner. And we're still going at the speech recognition, voice-driven workflow bits and dipping into clinical informatics, pathology informatics. So that gets me to my third act, which is basically in 2018, I started seeing VR at some conferences in healthcare. Really, really interesting stuff. I'll come back to that. But I really wanted to dip into more innovation in different lanes and spend the next 15 years or so really exploring and creating some solutions as well. So that pretty much covers the professional journey. And I would say I'm in some organizations, I'm in HIMSS, and I'm in data visualization and strategic alliances, which I'll come back to as well, and a few other things.
Well, first, I think that everybody grew up wanting to become Jacques Cousteau. And it's wonderful to hear that the calypso and And if you don't know, by the way, for the audience, if you don't know who Jacques Cousteau is, you got to figure that out. Second,
So cool.
He's a French explorer and marine biologist who had a TV show, and he is actually the character that was used as a model for one of the Wes Anderson movies
Yes.
with Bill Murray called The Aquatic Life of Steve Zissou or something like that, right? Which was a great
What a
movie.
legacy.
Right, exactly. So Jacques Cousteau, everybody. All right. Now, I'm afraid we won't have him on the program anytime soon because he's dead. But otherwise, I'm sure he would have come to LARVOL Friends because he's a great friend. So the other thing I want to say about the presentation of your background is that your superpower, and I've been always amazed at how you do that, is that you're such a connector in social media, always helping people and always connecting people, creating value through connection. You are a super connector. And so everybody who's listening, you should follow and say hi to Joe on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Pinterest, on TikTok. And I'm
Slow
probably
down.
forgetting.
LinkedIn and Twitter, pretty much the main two for me.
All right. Okay. No TikTok and Pinterest for you yet. Although that's where we were talking about doing a duet, the two of us. That's going to have to be on TikTok. So I'll wait for you on TikTok.
Okay.
All right. Young people like me, we spend our time on TikTok.
Sure.
Okay. So now AR, VR, and data visualization. I want to start with data visualization a little bit in healthcare before we talk about AR and VR, because that's actually how I started my own personal journey into VR. I worked with Mark Takeda, a consultant and a friend of mine. And initially, we got our VR headset to analyze cancer data, to visualize patterns in cancer data. Cancer data is multidimensional. You've got on one hand the tumor type, hundreds of different tumor types, the mutations of the tumor, and the third dimension are all the drugs and mechanism of action. So it's a three-dimensional universe. And so the thought is, what if we could navigate that three-dimensional universe using virtual reality to find new patterns? And so we did. And I think you already know the end of the story. We did not find any patterns yet, at least any pattern that we couldn't find in 2D. So it was just a conclusion of that experiment. Now, it doesn't mean that data visualization doesn't work. It obviously works in many, many cases. For us, it did not work. But the interesting thing is that it led us to actually embrace virtual reality as a place to work, and ultimately becoming the first company settled on the metaverse, headquartered in the metaverse. So let's talk a bit about data visualization. What have you observed or been involved in data visualization for healthcare, and how would you even define it for our audience?
Sure. So for me, data visualization is not fully connected to healthcare. I think there's still a ways to go there, but basically, I got involved with because I've been following a bunch of people for a while, and I was deciding, for this last stretch of my career, I really want to get involved in the things that interest me. So maybe I'll still get to the marine biology, but data visualization, really taking very large data sets, complex data, multidimensional data, and being able to present it in interesting ways that help people understand insights and explore the data, for me has been fascinating. And it's just something I couldn't get to before, in my career. So I started exploring. I got involved with the local New York City chapter of the Data Visualization Society, and I put a link up in the chat for anybody who's interested. And the DVS is really a fantastic organization with some data viz practitioners at Apple, and a guy who now runs the data viz lab at McKinsey, and a bunch of other folks, including students, including people who just learned R and Python in their spare time, who love data. And Yeah, so I've just been following that group, involved in that group a little bit. I participate in some of their healthcare activity and their local activity in New York City. And they do even things like data vandals. They do like data art on the street and to try and like bring awareness to a certain issue. And they'll use like rats for visual and present something or present trees and things like that. So a really creative group. And it just, using the power of different techniques to make the data interesting and catch you. And then there's an immersive 3D VR play in there that's been starting to develop. A few companies are in that space as well.
Thank you for that description. Would you say we're still very early in the application of the technology in healthcare? And is it because, if that's the case, is it because healthcare is more conservative and slower than other field, or on the other hand, no, healthcare is not that slow? That's maybe a stereotype of healthcare to be a little bit more conservative in applying new technology.
Yeah, I think there's some of that. I think healthcare is very conservative. I mean, when I was on Wall Street, I felt like the technology was slow, and in healthcare, it's even much slower. But I think it's probably a little bit resource constrained. I think there's probably not as many practitioners as are really needed at a high level, and they're solving problems in marketing and finance and things that have really large data sets that are maybe easier to monetize and make a value equation on. If we have better data insights, we can get a better result in our business. And I think healthcare is just a little bit lagging that.
By the way, in 5 minutes or so, I'll ask our producer, Shahir Sheikh, to jump in with a Shahir question for you. So I'll let him prepare his question, but you're going to have, he's always has a very tough question, though. Be ready for it's not going to be a low ball, I know.
Oh, no.
So he's going
Okay.
to ask you a tough question in 5 minutes.
Okay, I'm ready.
I'm ready. Time first,
I'll limber up a little.
The producer's question, right?
Okay.
So before we get there, I know you also work in voice recognition, and I've been amazed at what voice recognition does on one hand, but as a person with an accent, I've been a little bit worried about what it does for me. And occasionally, voice recognition led me to write down a text for one of my colleagues that had a big 4-letter word in the middle.
Yes.
In the sentence, and I got spooked out. Now I'm coming back into voice recognition, but it seems that field has made amazing progress, and that even my slight French accent seems to be now being recognized. Is that so? And so, what's the implication for healthcare?
So the arc of voice recognition, speech recognition, basically, I started there in about 2000, really exploring. And in those days, we had to, have a tower with cards to do the A to D convert, analog to digital conversion, to even be able to take the signal and do something with it, right? So in the bad old days, we had to put cards, physical boards in PCs to do processing. So the sea change for me is when we get away from, well, now we don't have PCs hardly, and we don't have any of this stuff, but the sea change for me was when we get away from having to put cards into PCs into having sort of general compute able to do functions like that. So going probably too far back into 2000, it was really a heavy lift. The software was getting good. The hardware was still catching up, and you had relatively small vocabulary, and you had to be a little more mindful of how you speak and do a few more corrections, and you'd have to learn really how the software wants you to speak. And are you more comfortable, dictating your punctuation, or do you have to correct a few words where maybe your French accent steers the engine towards a word that's not appropriate, and you have to sort of learn a little bit and then correct the engine. But over 20 years, the technology is amazing. We plug a little hockey puck into our wall now, and we say her name, and she can feed us restaurant recommendations or listen to NPR or anything like that. Still not totally suited for very specific medical use cases, but the technology and the AI that's coming behind it is how they're synced up. It's amazing. So yeah, it's I wouldn't be too shy about using it. And plus, you can always blame the engine if it gets a 4-letter word in there. But
you and I both started a career at IBM, I believe, right?
I actually worked with IBM when I was at Ogilvy. So I was on the
Ah,
ad agency, media, and tech side of the IBM doing some advisory.
I
I
see.
was advising like the client teams and the account folks at Ogilvy on how we use technology with IBM sort of globally.
Okay, okay. Um, I worked with IBM in their global service, international global service healthcare practice, and I started to worry about my accent being an issue. So I took an accent reduction class,
Oh no.
coach, right? I had an accent reduction coach because I would go around doing consulting and say, "We need to focus. Let's focus.
Careful.
Let's do a focus group." And so I decided that it was career limiting for me not to pronounce better. So I got a coach, and that's the only time in my career where I got fired. She said, "It's not going to work out," and she fired me as a client. I don't know if you should say client or patient for
Yeah.
an accent reduction practitioner. So
Yes,
that
yes.
did not. So now it's a work of voice recognition to do the work because my accent is not going to get any better. We
Yeah.
need to
Yeah. I mean, it's really
they
an
need to
AI
focus on
problem
that.
now, though. I mean, it's an
Yeah.
AI problem. Google Voice is hitting it with AI, and Microsoft purchasing Nuance has a huge AI capabilities that they're bringing to the table. So it's AI as much as it's the
Yes.
mechanics of speech recognition, of course.
Yes. Super. Uh, so now let's shift to the producer's minute.
Okay.
Shahir Sheikh, who's very aptly organizing this, is going to have a hardball question for you. Shahir,
Yeah,
it's all yours.
thank you very much, Bruno. And regarding your accent, so Bruno recently got a compliment from a waiter in France. He said, "You speak quite good French for an American."
Oh
Oh yes,
no,
yes.
that's a
That's a very.
backhanded. That's a
I
backhanded
I
compliment, I'm
was
afraid.
I was hoping you wouldn't say that. I won't have you ask questions anymore, Shahir. That's it. Oh, that hurts. Yes, yes. All right, back to you.
No, okay. So honestly, it's not a question. I was actually sitting with a few friends a few days back, and I was actually having a hard time explaining them why do we exactly need VR and the metaverse and AR and all that. So I just kind of want your endorsement because I know that you've been a big fan of this as well. How impactful do you think it's actually going to be for the humankind itself? And thinking of healthcare right now, people are able to access a lot of things in AR and VR that that used to be way way more expensive, or maybe like because there's physical distance involved, used to be difficult. But
Yeah.
all this ease of access, how is this going to impact our lives in
Yes,
the future?
that's a great question. Thank you. It is a hardball a little bit, in a way. So here's what I think. I mean, as an end user of VR, right? I'm in the headset not all the time. I'm in for little pockets, little targeted moments. I do some meetings here and there. I use it for, I play Beat Saber and give my kids and all that stuff. It's great. It's fun, but it's not a compelling use case other than that I'm technologist and interested in innovation and where this is all going. Otherwise, I probably would have never picked up my first headset either. In healthcare, particularly, I think about how many different constituent groups there are, from medical trainees, kids still in school, to early career physicians and nurses and practitioners, to diagnostic professionals, to all the way across the chain of medicine. In every specialty, there are different use cases, some really early, and some are pretty far along in behavioral health and surgery and practicing surgical skills and things like that. I think it's going to make a real impact in behavioral health. And I'm particularly interested in how we could use and should use VR to provide some wellness and some respite and even training on dealing with very stressful situations to medical professionals. I think this is a big area, and I'm in some medical facilities worlds where I work with the built environment folks, the architects, engineers, construction folks. furniture, everybody. And they're all thinking about how the facilities and the places that we create can even support professionals, not only patients, but professionals in doing their work during the day and providing a safer and healthier workplace. And so I think VR is exactly one of these kind of tools that should be incorporated. And maybe not only headsets, maybe, excuse me, small immersive spaces where you can go in like a little pod and get a very comforting, maybe it has aromatherapy, maybe it has some audio, maybe nice visuals where you don't have to strap a headset on and start, feeling like 20 minutes in, you want to take the thing off. I think there's going to be huge implications for healthcare workers and for healthcare end customers, namely patients.
It's interesting that you mentioned behavioral health and mental health in general. So I'm getting toward the end of 1 year in the metaverse. And I'm followed by a psychologist who is making sure that from a mental health standpoint that I'm holding on. And I am, by the way. But one of his concern was that in the metaverse, in some of the virtual environment, your avatar, your body image does not have legs. There's no legs. There's no lower body. And the psychologist was my Sorbonne professor and is now retired, but we met in Paris a week ago. In his worry that the body image we have is going to be messed up. Not only if you don't see part of your body, but also even worse, if you see a double of yourself, a double banger, so to speak, in the same environment, which often you do. I often log in with my headset plus my phone or my computer. So there are two of you. There are two of you in the same place. And I don't think the brain was supposed to process having two of you. I don't think that's good. So that could be a little bit of a challenge, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. I think that the converse is equally interesting, where for people who don't have the use of their legs, does it have some psychological effect when I don't even see legs on people? And now, anyway, there's so many interesting aspects to avatars and embodiment that we definitely are not going to have time for today, but, definitely over a cold beverage, perhaps.
Yes. Which is one thing, of course, that we're missing in the metaverse.
It's hard to drink coffee.
It's hard to do. Well, that's right. It's hard to doing anything. Although I think one of our colleagues, Daniel Jaramillo, found the right bottle to be able to be.
He better patent it.
Yeah. Because otherwise, that's true. It's actually very hard or even dangerous to try to drink when having a VR headset on.
Maybe that should be our next talk show, Drinking in the Metaverse.
Drinking in the Metaverse, yes. Etiquettes and best practices. We got it, yes. Now, by the way, there are a few new headsets coming. I'm using Quest 2, I think you are as well, which is a really good machine. I think there's Cambria coming maybe at the end of the year or early next year. There is Kia, right, coming from Apple. What do you think the hardware situation is going to be? Do you expect any big breakthrough, or should people just buy Quest 2? Maybe some people in the audience are thinking, well, should I buy one of the headsets now, Quest 2, $300, or wait for better hardware?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I mean, when you think about it, Quest 2, yeah, of course. Hot coffee and straws, though, don't always mix so great, Jen, but that's great. Quest 2, the hardware is really pretty amazing for the price point. I do have still some concerns about privacy, like everyone. I know Meta just got, I might switch beverages to wine. Yeah. Meta just got in, there's a little thing going on now with how much ads they're serving up in a healthcare context. So there's always issues, but the hardware is good enough and more than good enough for a lot of use cases. I wouldn't say I'd want to be looking at medical imaging in a Quest 2, say, but to take me to a mountain or a lake where I can like decompress and hear some interesting music, or go visit with some friends in a scenario, that's fantastic. Or for practicing flashcards or something where it could help narrow my focus to just what's in front of me, block out the world and do like a really targeted, pedagogical practice type thing. That's really awesome. So these use cases, I would say, are high enough return that people should be getting in and experiencing if they haven't yet, for sure.
A number of LARVOL's customers came to us at ASCO, for example, the big cancer conference, and said, would you please help us organize tumor boards in virtual reality? And it was nearly begging for us. Actually, it was impressive. Usually we have to sell to our customers to do something. They were selling us. They were telling us, no, we really need you to help us organize tumor board. Because in many cases on Zoom, which is often the place tumor board takes place, people don't pay attention. There's the engagement level, the immersion, even attention dropped a ton. But when you have a headset on, you're all in. Because
I think that's completely under or misunderstood or understood. The amount of the level of focus. Yeah, Vario is fantastic, Kevin, absolutely. But price point relative to a Quest 2, of course, is a big multiple. But for that use case and relative to putting what you can do in a reading room, it's phenomenal. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just jumping into some of the comments. The level of focus you get by being in VR is really fantastic. And especially with so much going on, and especially in Zoom calls, I have the dog trying to run out, I have a guy delivering packages. It's like, no, I'm in here. I don't see any of that. So I think for medical training, for wellness, there are massive implications of that forced focus for sure.
And obviously, and I saw a few examples of that in training, the ability to visualize anatomy, to practice surgery in 3D. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities that are already done, right? So that's already done. In our company, the learning has been how much human proximity virtual reality creates, because we work remotely for so long, we forgot what it is. Even again before COVID, in our case, we forgot what it is to be close physically to your coworker, to share the same place. And what I always say is that without a common place, you cannot create shared moments, shared memories. You need an anchor, a physical anchor. And with a headset on, you have an environment which could be very fantastic, a lake, a mountain, a sci-fi scene, and you remember meeting with someone, and you remember a team activity that you have. So
100%. I remember conferences I went to in Denmark 20 years ago, because we were all together, and came in hungover and whose hair was sticking up the next morning. Like, you remember those moments for sure differently than what we were on in the Zoom call.
Zoom doesn't create memory because Zoom is not a common place. And now that application of VR is not just for healthcare, but it applies to healthcare as well. Yeah. We're getting toward the end. We have 2 minutes left, Joe. And so now is a moment of highest pressure, the pronouncement moment, the moment where you're going to share with the audience. And I know they're waiting for that. So all the comments on LinkedIn, thank you, Kevin and others, by the way, for all the comments. I see other commenting as well. Thank you. So now is a moment, the one sentence, the prediction or the commentary from Joe that you have to remember and share with others. Go ahead, Joe. Share with us your
this is a lot of pressure, Bruno.
A lot of pressure.
I wouldn't say so much. I'm not so much a predictor, futurist, visionary guy. I'm going to have my opinions, but that's not so much my lane. I feel like for me, connectivity, connecting people and organizations with mutual aligned missions is really the thing. And so I'll leave it on, I use this hashtag, and I have to give credit to a colleague that I've met on Twitter and never in the real world yet. His name is Larry Joya. And he puts a hashtag ABCD, always be connecting dots. And I think this idea of connectivity and creating value by connecting things together and not necessarily thinking immediately what's in it for me, but creating these connections, creating value, putting it out into the world, and then seeing where it goes from there and helping shepherd it into the next couple of steps, I think for me is what I was put here for and what I look to do in my personal life and in my business life. So I'll
This
leave
is
it there.
a wonderful, wonderful formula, ABCD. We'll add that to the tagline in posting the podcast. Joe, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been a blast. And no singing, maybe next time.
We'll sing next time. Promise.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.